Hey team, welcome back to another video. As always, apologies about the old coronavirus hair now. It's starting to get a little bit out of control. So today, I'm going to do a video about the difference between a business that's loss making, trying to get itself to break even, and a business in uber growth, and actually the difference in the requirements, because they're very different things actually. And as I've been through the process numerous times, loss into profit, and then actually my last two jobs have been around uber growth, and the kind of people, the processes and the things that you need to put in place are entirely different actually. One thing gets you to a certain point, but actually you need different characters and different qualities and different skill sets to take you on to the next part of the journey. And you don't really realise that at times. And of course, that doesn't mean a completely clean slate of people, but certain personality types, certain characteristics you absolutely need when it comes to loss making, moving into profit and break even. But those behaviours, those habits and those people don't necessarily then allow you to kick on and hit the kind of numbers you would like to achieve at the speed you may want to achieve it. So I thought we could do the loss into profit into uber growth. As always, before we dive into the video, please like, please subscribe. It's a massive help to the channel, and please keep sharing it. It's awesome to have you on the journey with me. So let's dive in. Cheers guys. So what does it look like going from that loss to break even? And I talked about some of the kind of key elements of what you're looking for in another video, so I won't go over that. But actually, as I've said so often and in so many other videos, it's all about the people. And I'll use another football analogy as I have in others because it's what I know. It's a bit like if you're a relegation fodder team and a Sam Allardyce, a Tony Pulis turns up. It's about getting the defensive tactic right, it's the resilience, the team ethic, that it's us against the world.
This tippy-tappy stuff, everybody keeps going about the right way to play football is all a lot of sometimes. So getting the ball in the opposition's box as quickly as you can with quality and getting it forward and in behind the opposition is definitely sometimes the best way forward, and that's what we did in the second half, and that's why we won the game.
Scenario. So as you're going from loss, aiming for profit, the kind of characters that you're looking for is resilience, dogged, determined, naturally upbeat.
What's that film that you love?
What film?
The one about the fucking hairdresser, the space hairdresser and the cowboy. The guy's, he's got a tinfoil pal and a pedal bin. His father's a robot and he's fucking fucked his sister. Lego. They're all made of fucking Lego.
Star Wars.
That's the one, right. It's like that, okay. I'm gonna fucking kill all the bad guys. And you'll be able to blow up the big...
The
Death Star thing.
Yes.
Then you can go and live happily ever after on the planet of the teddy bears.
Very Ewoks.
But actually a level of resilience where they can keep going and they can really drive you through those hard miles. Because there's going to be a lot of disappointment. As you are making those kind of inroads, moving towards profit or break even, if I use Leicester City Football Club, and we were somewhere between £500,000 and £750,000 in the red when I took over, I had to remove 11 of the senior team and bring in a whole new team. And you needed to create that work ethic, and some of those people went through redundancies, some of those were compromised out of the business because, as I've said in all these videos, if you've got a cultural terrorist, get them out of the company and get them out quickly, because to get from loss to profit you've got to change behaviour. Behaviour is absolutely critical because it's learned. Do what you always do, you get what you've always got. So you've got to make some really smart moves and quickly. You have to act really decisively, not death by 1,000 cuts, not pontificating around the hard decisions. We all know the difference between right and wrong. We all know the people that will work and won't. And I'm all for giving people a chance. But actually, if you're losing money, your runway before you have to take off is very, very short. So you have to make big decisions and quickly. So you've got to be very decisive as a leader. Then what you're looking for is people that can weather a storm. Because if we take Leicester, when you are the thick end of £750,000 in the red, It's very, very easy to just say no to everything. Stop all the spending, don't do anything, don't do this, don't do that. But as I said in other videos, you've got to be ready to invest in what feels like the right stuff to bring you out the other side. But before we get on to the goal scoring, as we talked about, which is selling, you've got to get those costs right. And to get those costs right, you need the right people. So for me, diligent accountant. Might not be the big, sexy, dynamic commercial accountant that some of you in big organisations know. Actually, what you want is methodical. Someone that is going to trawl through detail and find savings for you, but also not make mistakes, because you can't go blind when you're the leader in a loss-making business. You need someone there. You need to be guided in the right direction as a leader. Where are the easy wins? What am I looking for? And then around you, you need to build a very, very balanced team. So like in sports, you want the right person in the right position. But you need a core team that are going to work hard, they're going to work diligently, and they are resilient. But you need them to be upbeat. You need some happy people in there. And when we talked about disprofiling in another business, in another video, you had the eyes, the ones that are going to lift the crowd and everybody's going to go with them.
Well done.
That went so quick, Rylan.
Didn't it?
I loved it.
Did you love it?
I loved working with you. You're so good.
I
You
know.
looked after me.
I know.
I mean, I carried you.
Yeah, you
but
did.
you were
You
good.
did.
I felt like I carried you through the whole
Do you
trip.
know what? I'm really happy for you.
You cannot, in a loss-making business, fill it full of eyes, because they won't do the detail and they won't stick with it. You need some S's, you need C's for the details, and you do need a couple of D's where it gets very dominant. You absolutely need those eyes, but you cannot wash the business full of eyes at that point, because there will be very hard miles and they are naturally in tune to move off and want to do something different. You have to remember at this point as well, the S's and the C's: steady, conscientious. You as the leader, if you are the leader, or if you are a team leader, or if you're a manager, you've got to bring them on the journey. Change feels very scary to an S, very. Change is also scary for a C, but if they can understand the logic and it is thought through and it is explained, they will go with you. Hence the very diligent, detailed, methodical accountant. And then you need a couple of Ds. You may be the D yourself, but you need the driving force, the person that is going to keep the pace up, that is relentless and will bring everybody with you. And then intermingled with the eyes, the happy, upbeat, life's great. Because actually that's what will keep the camaraderie, that's what will lift the energy, and that's what will keep everybody believing. So this is, as I say, this is how we built Leicester City. We changed the chefs, we changed the ops manager, we changed my deputy. We brought in a new head of sales. These are big positions. And actually systematically, with myself, we agreed what their focus was going to be. So my deputy focused on recruiting. I think we had about 200 part-time staff to recruit before the season started, and then we had to bed in the culture and the way we wanted to work, so he got to work on that. The chef changed all the menus, put in some brilliant innovative menus, brought the cost base down, but drove quality. And we changed the head chef and the executive and the sous chef. So actually that changed the dynamics in the kitchen, and there became a real focus on quality and price. And you can see through these little changes, you're making systematic change that changes culture. I took key positions, left a couple of the, let's call them stalwarts in, because you need the continuity, and not everybody is wrong for that environment. So you kept the ones that were relevant, and then you brought in some quite dynamic, quite powerful new personalities, and you mixed them in. You created a dynamic, and then we put teamwork at the heart of everything we did. My door was always open. We faced into everything together. We talked about all of the challenges, all of the constraints. I made them aware of the size of the loss so they could understand the changes I was making. But not only that, the speed at which I wanted to move at, because for every month that we didn't make those changes quick enough, the quicker we were going to be staring at things like redundancies, big job losses, lots of dramatic change. And actually we had a pot of money that we needed to spend on where we could get the biggest bang for our buck to bring us towards that profit, because when you're facing a loss of that size and you're in a company of very big substance, you do have to spend a little money to get yourself out of the loss-making situation, because the only other option is you should just turn the taps off, and that doesn't necessarily work. So those personalities, as I say, we blended in, a couple of I's, upbeat. We had a couple of D's. Myself, I'm D. I'm A-D-I-C. Oh, hey, Dick. My deputy was a D, but we both had quite high I's. The chef was an I, but with the C. And then everybody else that we brought into the team was a combination of S's and C's, and we had a very nice dynamic in amongst the team, and we had an I in HR. We then started to put a little bit of money into team building. Let's go on the odd day out, let's get to know one another, because you are in the trenches together essentially. You are going to have to go through some really tough miles. And every month that we brought that loss down until we hit the break-even point, we talked about it, we celebrated it, we championed it, so that everybody understood we'd taken another step on the journey. And what you're doing then is reaffirming their behaviour. All of the things that you've done to get us to this point, there is a reward, there is a thank you. So they acknowledge, right, I understand if I do that, it equals this, I get rewarded, we carry on. And actually, although you're making a loss, it doesn't feel like that, because when you're staring at 6-figure loss months that then become 5-figure losses, that become single-figure losses, actually it's as good as any win you can ever have. Very tangible and very easy for teams to understand, because they can recognise the journey that they are, one, going on, and two, being taken on, and they can understand their part in that. Because you've heard me talk about communication, you can't over communicate enough. Transparency, I don't want to go over some of the points that I'd made in other videos so it doesn't get too boring for you, but you can see when you add up transparency, autonomy, honesty, good people, all these ways of working start to add up, and actually it drives the culture. And as I said, those resilient, dogged people, although they're staring into losses and they're under pressure month after month to keep turning the dial, to keep moving it forward, to keep making marginal gains, it's okay, because they can see light at the end of the tunnel. And that is actually very, very different to Uber growth, because it takes a very different mindset and a very real focus on certain areas. So I'll use the example of Uber growth, and I'll use the Rico Arena here, where we went from a roughly 7-ish million turnover and a roughly-ish £700,000 EBITDA to a roughly 16 or 17 million and a roughly 3.5 million, give or take a couple of £100,000 either way, because I wasn't there as the books actually physically closed at the year end, but I'm confident within 150 grand. That was about Uber growth. I was there for 2.5-3 years, and it was about how do we get from that number, as I said, the 700-ish EBITDA, to the 3.5 million. We'd lost Coventry City Football Club, and there was a kind of systemic repetition. I don't want to say failure, because there were some very good people there, but there was no new news, there was no new strategy, no new way of approaching something. And the loss of the football club offered an opportunity, because it meant you didn't have to dictate what your venue was used for 7 days a week based around what the football fixture was. So we very aggressively ran at the exhibition strategy, because if you fill the exhibition halls, you can then supplement it with your meeting rooms, and you can then supplement it with your hotel.
Yes, well, yes.
Well, I was wondering if you could offer me accommodation for a few nights.
Well, have you booked?
I'm sorry.
Have you booked? Have you booked?
Oh, no.
Oh, dear.
Why, you're full.
No, we're not full. Not full? Of course we're not full.
Well, I'd like
One moment, please.
Yes, single room.
Your
with
name,
a-
please. Could I have your name?
Melbourne.
1 second, please.
And for the first 6 to 9 months, it was slow because we had a strategy, but people don't book exhibitions for sometimes 12 months in advance. So we were going off on winning work, but it wouldn't pay until year 2. But this is still an Uber growth phase. And how you do that, so as a leader, you've got to manage. So I had to manage the board. They want it done now, they want it done overnight. My kind of simple view is give me till this X period of time, and if I don't do it, you can always get rid of me. But I need you to give me the chance to see this strategy through. And then in terms of the difference between those resilient people, dogged, absolutely, in both scenarios, you still want good people. You still want transparency. You still want them to be upbeat and resilient, but there's different characters, and as you watch this, you will relate to what I'm saying. You will know the difference. So when you're going for Uber growth, you've got to store some goals. So you've got to go get yourself the best sales director you possibly can. You have got to put every bit of energy into facilitating selling. And when I say selling, that doesn't just mean, as I've said, there's no such thing as a bad sale. It's bollocks. You need to get selling, but behind the scenes, you and your accountancy team need to be absolutely drilling down to where the margin's best found and sending that sales team in that direction. Start to invest. So what I did, we created swim lanes. So we had an absolutely outstanding sales director, some outstanding sales people, and then we added to that team and we spread it. And what we did was then you had an exhibition specialist or specialists over time, conference specialists, party and wedding specialists.
For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
And then smaller bookings. So you had kind of 4 subdivisions and between 2 and 3 people in each subdivision. You then drill down into those numbers and where the most margin was, i.e. the exhibitions, and it also fed the rest of the business, as I say, hotels, conference room, food and beverage. You then drive all your energy into those because it's very, very margin bearing. So we don't have to discount heavily, but we can do enough to hook people because we've got really great margin. And then when we hook you in, we sign you into a 2 or 3 year agreement with incremental gains in that rental rate. So whilst we've hooked you in at the front end, we pay back over those 3 years, but we also give ourselves future sight of what our revenues are going to look like. So this is my point here. This is where you need dynamic, and this is where the kind of I's and the D's can really kick in at this moment, and they start to run. And you set them off in a direction. And whereas when it came to protecting the business, getting rid of the losses, you sent the sales team off last once you knew you'd got all of your ducks in a row. You understood where the margin was, you got your cost base down, and you weren't selling things needlessly. Very different when you're Uber growth. Where's the margin coming from? Quickly check it. Due diligence. Yep, comfortable. We're operating at this margin and this margin and this margin. Brief the sales team. This is what your bonuses are based on, this turnover, but you have to hit a certain margin. Go. Let them go. And then I set the teams running on the cost savings, because that is how you grow. As I said in the other video, it's the secret profit people don't talk about. Cost savings people view as in times of distress, we start hacking things out. You make, for me, constant iterations of cost savings over time so that it becomes part of the culture. So this is where the operations team, the chefs, the hotel, start to look at their cost bases and make the savings where they can. And actually that adds hundreds of thousands of pounds to your profit in big businesses. So we really started to dig down into that. And everybody understood their role. We are all here to facilitate the growth. And typically, those of you that are watching know there's a very real difference between a sales team and an ops or a delivery team. And never the two shall meet in a lot of businesses. So you have to manage the operational team to tell them to understand. The sales team are going to sell some stuff. They're going to cause you some problems. And they are, even in the perfect businesses, they're going to sell some stuff that's going to cause you some problems. but we don't win on Saturday if they don't score. You can stop us conceding goals and that is fantastic, but we need to win some matches here. And there'll always be that healthy tension. They will butt heads, but that's you as a leader stepping in to go, look guys, if you can make this sale a bit more profitable for me, there's something in it for you guys, and we recognise that. But this is where the transparency is key. What sales figures are we going after? How do we best achieve it, and where does the margin come from? So when that healthy tension happens, you can explain, look, they've got to get to this number and you've got to get us to this profit. You can't do it without each other, so we've got to work together here. But in these environments, you have to make it much, much more uplifting and fast-paced. It needs to be uplifting in the loss-making business, of course it does, but there's no point creating false hope. There has to be a realism. There has to be that dogged determination about we are going to bust through that wall and then we're going to go again. When you're growing, it's about creating that snowball effect where pace is being created and people can see success, because success breeds success. We set ourselves this target that we'd do £1 million in exhibition and conference rent in a September, but we had to build up to that because every month wasn't turning over £1 million at that moment in time. And I think we had to get the conference and events revenue. So out of the total 17 million that I think we got to in the end, from the starting position, 10 million quid of that was conference and events revenue of the 16 or 17 when I left. We were starting from a base position of about 4 or 5, so we've got to double this. Significant growth. And that's how you do it. You set your targets for certain big months and you ramp them up, and then the troughs you try and make slightly higher. And every time you're doing this, the complementary revenues, and this is where the other teams kick in, and you have to be transparent, you have to explain your thinking. So we're growing this up here, we're making sure we're protecting the margin, but the rest of you, this is where you kick in, because you can take us over the top and really deliver those margins. Upselling teas, coffees, lunches, what we used to call DDRs, really push the ancillary revenues. Anytime you sell in an exhibition or a conference, ensure that they're put through to the hotel team. And actually you had a very complementary symbiotic business where everybody understood their value in the chain, and actually we all drove in a very similar direction. And when I talk about, I think quite a number of the people that would watch these videos or that know me would work for me again, because they understand the direction we're going in. It doesn't mean it's easy, and it doesn't mean it's not hard work, and it doesn't mean there's not clashes. But once the journey begins, they're very clear what their role is in that journey. And you as the leader have to keep those plates spinning. You've got to keep those department heads on point, moving in the direction you want. You're at that back of the ship, steering left and right when you think that we're going slightly off course. But you've got to keep the pace up. And this is what I mean about those personalities. If you've dotted those I's and those D's in to mix them in with the S's and the C's, that will keep you consistent on a day-to-day basis. You all have to have an understanding. Things have to be deadlined. There has to be pace, and there has to be an intensity. This is very different to the kind of personality types that you're putting in those loss-making businesses, because those dogged, resilient people typically struggle with the idea of continual pace. Yes, you've got to get yourself to break even as quick as possible, but by nature of their personality, the desire to find the detail, the desire to find the depth, if you rush them, you can disillusion them. And that's where you have to then find that balance. Whereas when you're in the real growth side, you are just chucking fuel on the fire all the time and keeping them going. But you're wrapping that circle of people that are really getting the engine room going with steady and consistent people that are on the cusp of feeling really far out of their comfort zone, but just safe enough that it's exciting without feeling too dangerous for them. But you have to play that part really carefully, because in both scenarios there can be burnout for two different reasons. One, because you're running too quickly, and one, because you're asking just too much. The journey's too hard and you want it done in 12 months, but it needs to be 18. In both scenarios, you have to manage burnout. You have to protect your people. But as I say, in Uber growth, sometimes I don't want to say it's easier, because it's very, very hard to get going. But once you have momentum, your job is to get that snowball and just keep pushing it so it gets bigger and bigger, and then invite more and more people to push that ball with you, because it becomes enthralling, it becomes addictive when you see the incremental growth month after month, week after week, time after time. A bit like once you turn the tide of the profit. But as I say, if you think about those relationships, when you've got those dogged, resilient people, once you're then going uber growth, it's very difficult for those people to change pace and type and go, right, let's run differently now. And that's where you have to start to. And organisations change, people recognise their role in an organisation. A number of people will recognise their journey's come to an end for you. But you have to make the right moves at the right time, and you have to recruit the people around you to suit the objective, to suit the brief, because there isn't a one-size-fits-all person. And you have to really, really think about the relationships of your senior team and the teams below them, depending on what your objectives are. So hopefully that's a useful video. I'll keep coming at you with some of these more strategic parts of how you manage teams and how you drive best outcomes. But hopefully it's interesting. But as always, stay safe. Thank you for watching. Please like, please subscribe. See you next time. Bye.